So about Georgetown University, a couple of slides up front about just framing our organization and framing some of the work that we do. In the last hour, Georgetown is still the oldest Catholic university in the United States. We still have 16,000 plus students. It's a mix of undergraduate, graduate, and professional. We have a medical school and a law school. Our operating revenues are nearly $1 billion for last year. So just to give you a sense of the size of our organization. Some specifics about our P-card program. Our bank is J.P. Morgan Chase. We have a MasterCard. I actually hold a MasterCard. Well, that's a room key, but I do. I'm a proud P-card holder with the Jack the Bulldog on the face of it. We use Pathway as our banking software. That's our conduit for getting information about our transactional activity and our cardholders back to us for analysis. Again, just about the same metrics as Andy. We still have 1,300 cardholders. To give you a sense of size, we had just north of $26 million of P-card charges in our fiscal year 10. And a little more than halfway through FY11, we're pacing to come close to $30 million. So we're growing, and we hope to grow at an even faster pace. In addition to our MasterCard, we also have a number of grandfathered people who continue to use Amex cards. We have a 200 plus year history. Some things are just hard to change, and we're just working to transition people from Amex and hoping for a 100% P card solution at some point soon. A little bit of info about me. I'm an inactive CPA. I haven't had to sign anything for quite some time, so I didn't keep my active status. Barry mentioned that I've been at Georgetown for nearly 20 years, most of them in central finance, but the first 4 were in our medical center. So when I listened to the folks speak earlier today about working with research-focused activity, I can really relate to that. Working with P-card data is just one of the things that I've had the chance to do at Georgetown. I work with information about our students and our employees and our budgets and our taxes. And what I'm hoping to show today is just an illustrative way of taking data, in this case P-card data, and using it in a manner that facilitates the 10,000-foot view of overseeing your P-card program. So we'll get to that in a moment. The method that we use for doing our reporting is really an Excel-based tool. We are very late to a lot of games at Georgetown. We're very late to the fundraising game. We have a very small endowment relative to our peers, and we're also very late to the world of data warehousing. So we have what I like to affectionately refer to as the poor man's data warehouse. We acquire data from lots and lots of different sources, and we, at least in our central office, we accumulate it in PC database files. So not in Oracle and not in SQL Server or enterprise scale data. And we take that data and we structure it in a way that will become clear in a moment, where that data can be opened up in Excel. And thank goodness with the later versions of Excel, we can actually open files that have 1 million plus rows of information. So it's very, very powerful. And for all those different subject areas I've mentioned, we built applications for them, of which P-card is one, which you'll see. So we're going to talk through today three different facets of looking at and overseeing your P-card program. One, we're going to look at cardholders. Second, we're going to look at spending. And then third, we're going to look at the very specific things in a general ledger about suspense account balances. The spending data that we look at is going to be a combination of info that we download directly from Pathway, as well as some info that's in our general ledger. And the suspense balances are going to be just purely seen from the general ledger perspective, what comes from the Pathway system, plus the subsequent downstream journals that our departments do. So again, this is all about the whole genesis of this project was to be able to build for our central P-card office, and then down to our campus CFOs and their surrogates, just an ability to do a 10,000-foot view of everything. So we're including info that comes directly from Pathway, but we're complementing it with information that we have in our general ledger, and we're supplementing it with additional information that we track internally. about our cardholders. So the frequency with which we get updated information is monthly. So cardholders it's a pretty small data set. It's a couple of thousand rows. We get information directly from JP Morgan. And for those folks that have Amex cards, we get a corresponding data set from American Express. So while the data fields are different, they have different field names, many of the characteristics are similar. Each file has a card number, in a different format, a first name and a last name, whether the card is active or inactive, if it's been inactivated, some reasons for that, a bunch of things like that. And there's some other stuff on the slide about spending limits, and most importantly, our internal ID number for the cardholder. So there's a number on the card, and then there's the number of the that represents the cardholder that links to our internal systems. And with that employee ID, and we'll just see some exhibits in a minute, you can link each person to their home department, where they're administratively based on campus, whether they're part of our medical center or our law center. And you can tell further what college are they a part of, what department within that college, things that are org hierarchy based. We can also tell information about their job code. So is a card being held by a faculty member or a dean or a student or a temp or someone who's active or inactive? The employee status is a big delimiter. And lastly, as Andy mentioned in the prior session, along with each department, we maintain internally, centrally in finance, a risks table, so that departments that have had incidents in the past or large transactional activity, we have a table that rates them for risk, so that we can focus on departments that we really want to focus on. So given all of this information, these are the kinds of things that you can do, and I'm just about to transition over to doing some of that analysis interactively. So just with cardholders, without looking at spend yet, you can see those active cards that are associated with call centers that are invalid, and that's important because when they're interfaced to our ledger, they're gonna fail our journal edits. You can look at active cards that are linked to people who are no longer active on payroll, or who are part of our affiliates but not in one of our internal departments. So with that, let me just switch right over into our analysis. So I mentioned very briefly that we've extended the functionality of Excel, and this is what it looks like to our customers. We have about 200 customers on campus that use this in many different roles, and we've built this additional menu bar that hangs at the top of Excel. This works in all versions of Excel, the old 2003, 2007, and the newer 2010 version. We have menu bars that each contain menu bars for area-specific analysis, and each of these menus has lots of depth behind it. So under surveys, just for example, we just got done with an NSF grad student postdoc survey, and we're working on another one. And in the meantime, our sponsored programs folks are looking at proposals and awards. We have all sorts of information about financial statements, looking at our balance sheet and income statement footnotes, audit reports. Yes, sir. We've built this all internally, and the data that is used and routed through this comes either from our internal enterprise systems, our general ledger, or our payroll, our student or advancement system, or from external sources like Pathway, or AssetMax is an outside source we use for fixed assets. But it's allowed our users to have a common denominator for what they use to do data analysis. So this is I think I referred to this before as we like to think of this as our poor man's data warehouse. We don't use we own Cognos, but in the central finance office we have not developed a whole lot of extensive applications, and there's some politics and organizational bridging about collaborating with our IT counterparts. So, but in the meantime, without that collaboration, we've continued to need to do board reporting and tax reporting and all those different things that need done. So this is the solution that we've come up with. So we're going to focus on some examples with P-card data. So I have a number of files open. So let me just describe the convention a little bit. We have a file that's a DBF. It's really the lowest common denominator in the database world, and it's really a grid of just rows and columns of data. And each row one has the field names. So if you've used Access or if you've done filtering in Excel, this is the mechanism that makes it all work. We tend to use short file names, so there tends to be a prefix in the front. So CHDR is our shortened acronym for cardholder. We try to get all the clarity that we can into 4 characters or less. And then the suffix of the file name, the 1009, we tend to use a year and month indicator. So this is information that was back from September. And then to make this all come to life, right now this is probably about 4,000 or 5,000 rows of information. To make this all come to life, you've seen the menu bar. So then we find the menu. We have the menu that corresponds to that template with the CHDR in the front, and then we can either run one or multiple analyses. So for now, I'm just going to run a first one, and this is exactly how all the other analysis work is going to generate. So I've selected the menu bar, and that's actually invoking some pre-recorded pivot tables. Have many of you used pivot tables before? It's about a third or a quarter of the room. If I have the chance to come back next year, I'd like to see at least 3/4 of the room or more. Please take the time to familiarize yourself with this. I'm sure that you all own Excel, and by owning Excel, you own this capability, and it's immensely powerful. So this is just one particular exhibit, and this enables us to very quickly look at a high level of all the cards that we have and look for anomalies. So you can see that the underlying data has stacked both the P card people and the Amex card holders. And I tried to distinguish along the top counts of those people that have a Pro card only and no Amex, those people that have an Amex and no Pro card, and those people that hold both an Amex and a Pro card. And you can see along the side, there's some testing that we did. We looked for things that were okay, things that really didn't merit any further review, and we also showed the status of the cards. So the vast majority of our Amex cards are inactive because they're canceled. But there are a fair number of things that do need some review. And with this pivot table functionality, you can look at this one-page summary, get a quick sense of what needs further looking, and then you can say, oh, we have an active card, but not with an employee, with an affiliate, and you can double-click. You can double-click on any number, and that will pull up the underlying rows that represent just that number. Very powerful, very easy. Read only, so you're not changing anything on your enterprise system, but just a very flexible, powerful, adaptable tool. And just by scanning along the side, I know it said SSN, but that's a fake internal number. So for those of you still thinking about the FBI gentleman, we don't have any EPI information in our templates. We try to have our IT audit folks help us with that. And then we can just skim along to the side and find the names of the people who are cardholders, but in our current payroll roster aren't listed as active employees. I should mention just one brief thing about our roster data. That's another set of information that we capture each month. So we always have a current roster, and we preserve each month. So we go through, in terms of looking at active versus inactive, we go back in reverse order. So we look at our cardholders and see if they're on the current roster. That's great. They're active employees. They may or may not have an active card. But then we step backwards month end by month end. So for those employees that are inactive, we can see, is this an active card for someone who left a month ago? And maybe there was a notice that hasn't been processed yet by our P card office. That's very different than someone who hasn't been active for a year. And it kind of makes you wonder why that card has been active for such a long time, and it makes you want to look at that person's transactional activity, if there is any, because that's particularly risky. I wanted to show another example or two just in the cardholder side. Oops, this screen is a little small. I just ran this first macro exhibit before Another convention that we've tried to build in is the ability to run a whole bunch of them at the same time. So this is a small template, and this should run pretty quickly. So there were a couple that I just wanted to point out some things on. Sorry. So you can see that it's rendering each exhibit in turn. It's putting each on a separate tab. Each of these exhibits is referencing the same underlying information. So you're summing up the same data. You're just presenting it different ways. And again, this is all in Microsoft Excel. So if you all work in business offices and your counterparts, I'm sure, in your controller's office or your budget area, and this is a very commonly used tool. So please, I would really encourage you to take some time to learn about pivot tables. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So we looked at one exhibit that was by status. This is another exhibit that shows the same data, but instead is organized by our campus hierarchy. So these are short codes. This is maybe not meaningful to those of you that are outside of Georgetown, but from left to right, this summarizes by campus. So we have our main campus, our GU campus, our law center, our medical center, our university services area, and for those people whose IDs who are in the P-card data, but I couldn't find in our roster, they had to go somewhere, so I just gave them a ZZ so that they stand out. And other things that you can do with pivot tables is you can filter on any one of these things as well. Again, you're not changing the underlying data, you're just taking advantage of this capability. So if Andy is working with our law center CFO counterpart, he's able to walk through with her just how many people have Amexes, how many people have active cards. You can use these filters up at the top to further limit the data. How many people have standard cards? And I guess most of them do, because the screen didn't change. Those people that have travel and entertainment in standard card, and this time the screen did change. And this is, again, just using Excel's capability. Another interesting exhibit was to be able to go a little bit further than the department. So not only do we mimic or show the hierarchy, but for each of these departments, you can see the individual card holders, their payroll job codes, what salary account that belongs to. That has meaning for us. Anything with a 701 is an academic employee. It could be a faculty member. It could be kind of a senior administrative professional like a dean. Anybody who's 703 is a staff person, an accountant or an administrator. You can see the names of the people, their internal IDs, what roster we found them on last. Here, I'm sorry, this is a little small if you're in the back. You can see if somebody is on our current payroll. This is September info, and by the time we ran it, we had October roster data. And this person hadn't been on our payroll since August. So it's an example of a card that's in the hands of somebody where the card is active, but the person is not. So we really want to go in and inactivate that card. So our P-card folks can use these tools to very quickly scan every one of our card holders and do quick on-the-spot maintenance directly in the banking software. There's some other info embedded in the data file that I didn't show here. You can look at spending limits. You can look at the default cost center to which a cardholder's charges are to go. You can do things with those default cost centers. If it's a grant center, you can see if that grant is from a federal source. You can see if that grant is about to expire or is expired. It's another test of validity. Just one more thing I wanted to show, just another view of things. I selected this field as a filter before, but now it's down here as a row. So here's our unique card holders. You can see by Amex and by MasterCard. And then within MasterCard, we have a number of different card categories, and you can quickly see that as well. Again, I just want you to take from this, if you take nothing else besides the pitch to use Excel and pivot tables, I want you to take from this that you should be able to work with your respective banks and acquire the same data and do the same kinds of things in your respective shops. Just one more quick show of hands. Are there folks that do similar analysis in other tools? Does anybody else get info from their bank? I heard several times today that folks go directly into the banking software and run reports. And I'm not sure if you find them limiting sometimes because you're not able to quite get out what you want or at the level of summary or detail. I'm just curious about how many folks do get data from your banks. Oh, a little bit bigger percentage than with Excel experience. So I would love to talk with some of you afterwards about your experiences with this. Like many other things, I do things with kind of the Georgetown silo. I'm not sure what other folks do, and I'd love to learn from you also. So that's a quick view of cardholders. I'm going to switch over to looking at spending now. So back to PowerPoint. Whoops, where'd it go? That's not good. Oh, I'm sorry. Here we go. I'm sorry. So anyway, with spending, this slide will come up eventually. There it is. So the data that we look at is going to come in a couple of flavors. We're going to look at data that's sourced, again, directly from Pathway. And even that data, as we acquire it, comes in two flavors. There's what I think of as the summary level data, where you really have one row per cardholder, per charge, for really each swipe of the card. And then there's the additional, what should be parallel data, that's level 3 information. So the level 3 information is far more granular. In many cases, if we have one line of summary data, we'll get one line of level 3 data if the merchant doesn't provide the level 3 information. But in the case of the data that Andy showed before in the prior session about Target, that one transaction, that one swipe for $80-something for the breakfast for the student group, that came in as about 10 individual rows of level 3 information. So the data comes in different forms, and we have separate templates to house it. And then lastly, we do analysis on what information is fed from our P-card system into our general ledger, and then the subsequent transactions that occur only in the general ledger that relate to our suspense accounts or reallocations, things that happen downstream of the banking software that happen only in the ledger. So we've got analysis for everything. So on the Pathway side, you've heard a couple times today that the level 3 data that comes from the bank is very, very rich. You can see the detail of the items that are purchased, particularly for big vendors. We mentioned Amazon and Target and Best Buy, and that can be good, having that stuff, and it could be not so good for the cardholder if they're doing something nefarious or even worse. Airline information is very interesting. Just about all the airlines provide info about the name of the passenger, how many, there's a count metric, so how many passengers are actually on that charge. If I didn't mention the name of the airline, the start destination and the end destination. So if you get a written receipt that somebody is flying from New York to Chicago and the destination is Las Vegas, it would make you a little bit curious. And I think Amtrak also offers information about passengers. We're on the Northeast corridor, so we have folks that take the train instead of flying from D.C. to Philly, New York, Boston. Just one thing that we've observed, and it's not terribly material, but it has been a little bit problematic. The level 3 data doesn't always match, at least in the form that we get it, doesn't always match the summary level data. So there's some internal inconsistencies in the data that we get from the bank. But we found that that's less than 1% difference. So we decided that we would rather continue to use it and get the value, and rather than worry that it didn't reconcile exactly to the penny. Also, when we're doing analysis on our data directly from Pathway, the data doesn't always have valid chart field values. So when we get the journal interface, I think it's every 2 weeks that it comes through. Yes. But when we get a big monthly interface, it probably has about 15,000 individual debits and credits, and on average there's 75 lines or so that have some sort of chart field error. Either a cost center is either missing or invalid, or an account code's invalid. So the data that's fed to us from Pathway, once it's fed, doesn't change in Pathway anymore. But we do have to change it on the GL side in order to get it to post in our ledger. So that's a place where the data becomes inconsistent, and we just have to account for that in our templates. Some more info we embedded inside of the pathway data sets. They're MCC codes, merchant classification codes. Very rich. Tells you an awful lot in a very short code about who you are buying from. We've talked about the date of the transaction, and that you'd be able to get to the day that that transaction occurred. Is it a weekday or a weekend? And we talked on the cardholder side, which is also on each transaction. You can look at activity and measure by department or by staff type or active versus inactive. We'll look at that in a moment. I'm going to just skip through this slide because we'll just see some sample analysis. So let me switch on back to Excel. Excuse me a moment. Okay. I'm going to go first to our level 3 data. So this is data just for the month of July. We normally build, and you can see the different suffix, 1007 representing July instead of September. Every month we get, this is an early month in the fiscal year. There's about 12,000 rows. You can imagine how large this file gets and how much slower this would run if I were looking at a full year's worth of data. So I just opted for something small. So back to our add-ins under our procurement menu. I'm looking at our ProCard Level 3 data. This is a menu bar where we have a few more choices. So this time I'm not going to run them all. I'm going to run probably half a dozen of them in turn. Oh, sorry, thank you. So I'm going to run about half a dozen of them in turn. So we'll look at two different views of our MCC data. So we're regular active browsers on the web. And if you saw the reference to the University of Vermont, I'm not sure if there's anybody here from Vermont, but they had a very nice web page when I was first starting to learn about MCC codes. And it was essentially a dictionary that clustered them into buckets. This is a very detailed look at them, so it shows their grouping and then the individual MCC codes themselves. So for the moment, I'm going to just move the codes off themselves. And the University of Vermont has a structure where there's roughly about 20 roll-up values, summarizing to about $2.4 million of just July activity. At the same time, summarizing the same rows, we can look at another clustering of MCC codes that we got from JP Morgan. This may be the group that Andy's group uses more frequently because it comes from our bank and they update it more regularly. So again, let me take the moment and hide the codes themselves. And this time there's a two-level cluster. There are those MCC codes that are considered to be either medium or high risk. And yes, we did have some activity, or quite a fair amount of activity, and then far more individual categories of codes grouped together. But these roll-ups add up to the exact same thing. We're summarizing the same data, just presenting it in a different way. If we wanted to look at, is there anything innocuous? Can I click on something? Okay, so another technique that you can employ is to double click, not just on a number, but you can double click on a category, and then you're prompted for anything that you want to summarize next by. And I'm going to look for MCC code. So within home furnishings, this $9,000 or 30 transactions, there were 4 MCC codes, and I think we should be able to drag that in. And we can see a little bit more about that. Oops. And then we can double click on any one, or you can continue to add hierarchy, add nesting levels. And if you wanted to see the cardholders that represent the 11 transactions at hardware stores, or you can do whatever you want. So that's from the MCC perspective. Two different views, and this is a set of groupings that we maintain internally. This doesn't come to us from the bank. Although it's at JP Morgan, we just maintain that table internally. Another really interesting view, one that's very small in size, but very, very powerful, is to be able to look at the day of the week. So we have two metrics here. We have dollars up top, and we have counts at the bottom. And if this were data that were more than July, you would see the months going across the side. So it's very, very easy to see, from the date of the transaction, July 4th, did that occur? Or it's a pretty standard database functionality. What day of the week does that date represent? So that's how we're able to come up with these 7 values. I was looking at this yesterday and was wondering, why was activity so much higher on a Thursday? And I guess I was trying to infer that it's the summertime. People are taking long weekends, so they're not coming in on Monday. They're leaving early on Friday. And that leaves Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but kind of seemed reasonable for one month. And for those in your P-card offices that are interested, if these Sunday or these Saturday transactions are worrisome, you could do the same kind of gesturing and technique where you could double-click and find the cardholder or the department. And we have one campus that's overseas in Qatar. Thank you. And they're very large users of our P-card. So they tend to have a disproportionate amount of use on weekends. So that's normally okay. I've lost a hand here, but I don't feel comfortable clipping onto my lip. I guess. What else did I want to show you? 4A and 4B. Here's another roll-up of the same data. This is the same department hierarchy as before. So this time what you're looking at is not the number of cardholders in each part of the campus hierarchy, but the dollar volume that occurs in each of them. And one bit of Georgetown nomenclature across the top, we have a 9-character cost center. A cost center is our most granular organizational chart field. We have life to date over, I think, about 30,000 of them in our financial system. But the convention that we have for sponsored programs is they all start with the letters RX, and grants come with an extra level of attention that's required for compliance. So we distinguish very often our research-based activity versus our non-research-based activity. So these are the things in this no column represent unrestricted funds. They could represent some things from our endowment funds for our central endowment office. They could represent restricted but not research funds, but you get the idea. Just another look. So to focus on research or sponsored programs, not only do we focus on that as one mini umbrella, but within research we pay particular attention to federally funded research. So this is a way of tagging the data with another filter field that only will show activity that's in federal grants or funded from federal grants. And we do 2 forms of that. With the campus hierarchy on the left, you can see the chart fields here in this middle column. And then we also distinguish if those federal dollars are funded to us directly or if we get them through a flow-through sponsor. So we have a number of grants where we receive the dollars through a pass-through entity. The dollars initiate with some NIH agency. They are awarded to another university who's thankfully kind enough to award them onto us to spend. But when we do our federal reporting, we need to know that the initiating source of those dollars is federal, and this gives us a chance to do that, to look at all the federal spend on our P-card. Am I going too fast, or is this an okay pace? Anything? Okay, I'll just keep on going. I had country. So we know the country in which a card is swiped. We tried to regionalize that. We have a number of different reporting requirements, both on spend and on receipt by country. So just talking for a moment about receipt, every 6 months, we have for the Department of Education, we have to supply them with a list of either donors or sponsors or other contractual arrangements that we have with folks that are outside the United States. And on the payment side, on our 990, for example, we have to show by regions, particularly for those countries that are not on the watch list, but countries like Iran or Korea. I'm just going to say Korea, but that's not North Korea. Thank you. I couldn't generalize so much. But countries that we have diplomatic difficulties with. So this gives us a chance to do that. And I guess this may be a case where you may wind up with some false positives in the data, where a swipe may occur in a country, but the country that comes along for the ride in the P-card data may be the country in which the corporation is housed. So you might be in England and buy something from a subsidiary of an American company, and you get United States inside the data. It's not always as clean as this appears, but at least it gives you a starting point to see where your money is being spent. Some other analysis that we can do is we know that within our hierarchy, within our campus, within our units, there are some areas that perform a lot of their activities overseas. So it makes more sense for their charges to be from international locations. So this gives us a chance to delve further into that. Yet another view of this data that's quite interesting is the financial statement impact. So right back to our menu, just another view, financial statement impact. So this is a pretty long list. This isn't quite down at the chart field, but it's pretty summarized. So we can look. We can look first at the information that's impacting our statement of activities. Most of our $2.4 million for the month of July goes not only through the statement of activities, but through operating expense. Our Dean of Financial Services would be quite concerned, though, about the $2,000 that's being recorded for financial aid. I would be willing to guess that this is happening in our athletics department, and some of our coaches are walking student athletes over to our bookstore. They're buying books for them because certain athletes can have books as part of their scholarship. And then we record that in our ledger using a financial aid account, and it shows up as tuition discounting netted in this line. That's my guess. That would be my next guess. Thank you. Somebody might have picked the wrong account code if you didn't hear Andy. And if activity doesn't appear on our income statement, it appears on our balance sheet. So things could route through. I'd be kind of concerned about why we're making trust payments on a credit card. That doesn't seem right. That is probably more likely a wrong use of an account code. And with our financials, we have the statement, balance sheet, or income statement. And then we have really a 4-level convention that we try to use. We have a section and a subsection. So in the income statement, it's operating in either revenue or expense. And then we also maintain a line and a subline. So within supplies and services, we roll up our chart fields to lots of granularity. It's these 3 levels that are on our audited financials, but it's this 4th level that really gives us meaning. It really tells our departments, our campuses, our central budget staff what we're using our card for. And I should mention that to give some context to our spend, about 5% of our non-salary spend is done using a P card. And we hope in the near term to get that percentage to be higher and the percentage of spend that's in accounts payable to be a bit lower. But this gives us the ability to, which we won't talk through today, but we look at P card data and what we call consolidated billing data and AP data all together. And this is the crosswalk. So if we want to establish a relationship with a vendor to buy office supplies, and we know that they, like Office Max, and we know they accept a credit card, if we see that people are also getting reimbursed or they're sending vouchers that have to go through AP, that's really problematic for us. So this is a different area of monitoring for our P card folks to look at how spending and how payments are made. One other area, last one on this template. This is number 9. So this is I've learned in the P card world, I guess this is the famous split transaction. So It seems that as a cardholder, if you want to buy something that's more than $2,500, if $2,500 is your limit, but you have a larger daily limit, you're really not constrained at all. As long as that vendor is willing to cooperate with you and split that transaction into $1,500 and $1,000, or $1,500 and $1,500, something that exceeds your cap, it's very possible to use that P card in one day and buy what you want and bypass your university's or policy or your spending limit. So this is an exhibit that we constructed that lets us look at the combination of card holder, the transaction date, and then the merchant. And if there was more than one transaction that appeared in that group, then we flag them. And some of these are I guess, expected, and some of these are in areas where if you see this recurring over time, you've got a cardholder who's really just trying to bypass their limits. So this is a very fast way of being able to look at the magnitude of this problem, identify people who are circumventing the controls that should be preventing them from doing this, and picking up the phone and understanding what's happened. So that's about all I wanted to show from this template. I wanted to flip over to our general ledger template very briefly. A couple more analyses. So this is our different template, our P card template. And I wanted to find number 4. So again, this is a summary of our July activity, but this is as routed through the general ledger. So this includes not only what was interfaced from the pathway system, but all the subsequent transactions that were made to perhaps reallocate from one cost center to another, or were made to clear a suspense balance. And we make a distinction in here. We've tried very, very hard to be able to link activity I was mentioning before that's processed in our P card system with info that's in our accounts payable system. And the best way to implement that is to try to get your P card vendors associated with an internal accounts payable vendor ID. So we built an internal table. Right now, I think we're up to about 1,300 or so text entries that if the P card transaction doesn't come to us with a TIN on it, and we don't have that TIN in our table, but we're able to match up something about that vendor's name, like if the first 10, 12 characters are, I'll just highlight this one, are APP, applied and then bio, we'll link that to our internal vendor ID so that when we do composite P card and AP spend analysis, we can really link those vendors together. So not just the chart fields in which things occur, but which vendors did we buy things from. It's a very powerful tool to let us look at our non-salary spend. I think I mentioned 3 forms of that before, our P card or accounts payable, our consolidated billing, and then the 4th place where we have non-salary spend, which we really would like to eliminate, are employee reimbursements. So we have another downstream template where we fuse all that stuff together. But anyway, back to this one. In largest to smallest order, these are the vendors that we bought from in July. What they have in common is this field, this has a vendor, is set to yes. You can see our internal vendor ID. So we've done a pretty decent job of matching them up to internal vendors. But then there's an even far larger set of vendor names and dollars that we weren't able to match up to an internal vendor. So we're just going to keep aspiring to link this to vendors to the extent that we can. Knowing that we don't have to do 1099s for P card anymore, that's been a big relief. We also recognize that there are vendors that we only spend money with on a P card. So we would never have any entry for them in our vendor master, so we understand that too. But for those that we do have spending in both places, we still try very hard to link them up together. One more view from this template. PRC. By cost center. So this is a view again of our general ledger activity, not just from Pathway, and we can summarize it by center and by cardholder with center. So you can see those centers that have more than one cardholder, and those centers that have only one cardholder. That's another another area of monitoring. If you see an invalid charge on a center, in the case where there's only one defined cardholder, it's great. You know who to talk to. But for those centers that are large, that have multiple people that are spending from them, then you have to really do a little bit more work to figure out who's doing what. I have one more template that I wanted to show you. This is our one line data file from Pathway, not the level 3 data. This is another interesting way to look at information. So this should be what we call our banded summary of spending per month. So Andy in the prior session described looking for transactions that were in departments that have a high level of risk, or in MCC codes that have a high level of risk. This is another way of looking for things that are out of the ordinary. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. So this is an analysis that we do where, knowing that we're in the month of September, and yes, acknowledging that we got some October activity based on the time that we got our September data. So we're looking at the spend by month by cardholder, and then we're looking at the current month's activity against the average of the prior month. So we're really looking for big spikes. Was there an increase of activity in the month of September? Was there a big drop in activity in the month of September across all of their spend? Or was the activity in the month of September reasonably close to what they've spent in the prior months? So we band them together on the left. So the ones that merit the most attention bubble up to the top with our coding. So we can find those where the current month average is between 40 and 100% more than the prior month's average. And even worse, maybe not worse, but just the ones that you want to pay attention to, where the current month average is more than double the average of the prior months. Maybe this isn't as meaningful early in the year, but when you have more months of activity, those spikes really stand out. Some of the other buckets are for exceptions. If they have activity in prior months but not in the current month, you don't want to pay attention to them. If they had their first set of activity in September only but not in prior months, that's a different set of issues, so you can just cluster them separately. So let's for now just focus on the people who have had big growth. So these are the people who in September have doubled what they had in prior months. And let's not look at them alphabetically. Let's look at them in order of growth. So I'm going to change this to just more things you can do with Excel. So these are, let's see, these are the folks that have had, let's look at an example. These are small dollars, but this person in September in the first couple of days of October, had a sum of $7,900 worth of activity. And in the prior months, they had an average of $55 of activity. So that is quite the spike going, from September forward. I think in many cases this has to do with the school year starting in September and people ramping up their spending. But I just wanted this to be illustrative of a way of looking at your data in a way that your banking system is likely not able to do it, and applying some other analysis and banding to let you focus on things that are out of the ordinary. So this requires being able to access all of your data, being able to split it by cardholder and by month, and being able to tag it with labels that let you filter very quickly and look for anomalies. So I've given you maybe a dozen examples of analysis that we do on spending. I'm going to switch back to PowerPoint. And I just want to talk about looking at suspense accounts. Any questions, or too fast, too slow? Up until about a month ago, I had an analyst working with me, and the two of us together constructed this family of templates, and we built all the other ones as well. I'm housed in the finance department, so we do work like this for our P-card program, but for our budget office, our accounting office, our sponsor programs office. So all those menu bars that were available on our screen have corresponding analysis for those areas, and we just route them all into one place for our users to be able to do whatever kind of analysis they want to do. So this is what in our long-term plan, what a data warehouse should do for us. But we just don't have access to a data warehouse that does this yet. So this has been our solution. They change. They tend to be pretty dynamic. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
When it pulls the reports from your finance system, it's done in an Excel format to begin with?
No, it's not. So we use an old version of PeopleSoft, but it doesn't matter what your financial system is. We've developed some programs that extract from the databases that underlie PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft sits on top of Oracle databases. We extract each night something in the neighborhood of about 140 different tables. Some of them are very small and not changing, like a list of states and their names or countries and their names. Others are very large. A ledger table summary, for example, so beginning balances and monthly actuals by chart field combination, by journal source and reference. It gets to be close to 2 million rows by the time we're at the end of the year. We pull a vendor master. We pull the affiliated tables like vendor address, things about our sponsor programs, our sponsor table, our sponsor address table, our sponsor attribute table, things about our chart fields, our org hierarchy, just on and on and on. So we take essentially, so we get the raw data with control totals. I mentioned inactive CPA, but I've kept that compulsion from making sure that the data that we pull out is consistent with what's in our financial system, because the last thing I ever want to deal with is people that don't trust our tools. So we pull the data, then we have a whole sequence of programs that run across a couple of PCs. Again, we're not using Oracle. That run across 3 PCs that go for several hours each day, that import that data, that structure result sets. It could be the budget, that tax, that sponsor program, proposals, awards, pipeline, whatever. And then we take that data and then we split it and make it available to our campus community. And this is just one of those data sets. And this one's a little bit different in that we only build these pathway-based data sets once a month. That's the level of frequency with which we get that data. But there's far more things that we build every single day because there's postings every night. So we use PC-based tools, and we construct them into DBFs or just regular PC databases, which are optimized to use in this Excel tool. Does that help?
Yeah, it's not nice. I got the picture.
It's got to be collaborative. You can't just send a note to your IT folks and say, I want this data. They need to understand what you need, and you need to understand what they have available and what they can provide to you. So this activity has got to be from both sides, and you need a liaison sometimes between the two shops, but it's a mutually beneficial exercise. that was the justification for getting compensation information out of what had been our lockdown payroll system, because another federal requirement is effort reporting. So we needed to be able to have roster information, and we needed to have transactional information. So in our payroll system, at any one point in time, a person whose salary can be split among up to 10 different cost centers. But in the effort reporting side, over the course of a whole 12-month window, I think my favorite example was a biostatistician we looked at one year who had a portion of his salary on 35 different cost centers. Little bits of time, a couple weeks here or however it worked, but it was quite the long effort exhibit. And being able to use the federal reporting requirements as the hammer to knock open that walnut was really helpful to us. Yes, ma'am. If they can open the data file in Excel, they can do what Andy's done. If you came in the prior session, and he takes the same underlying info and opens it up in Access. You can use Excel's charting features to turn these 12 months of number columns into line charts. If you wanted to do that, you could bring it into stat software and run whatever kinds of procs you like. The data is in a very very commonly understood format. So we have about 200 customers. I think I'm connected to the web. I'll show you our front door. Just give me a second. I noticed that even though I'm still using Eastern time on my computer clock, we've hit the 5 o'clock time. So if you guys were counting on me being done at 5 o'clock, please feel welcome to go and enjoy the little bit of sunshine. I won't be at all offended if you want to get up and go. I totally understand. I kind of want to get out there too. I'm blocking the light. So you asked how our campus community accessed this. This is our front door. It's one screen that everybody on campus can see. It's a URL that everybody on campus in our secure firewall can get to. But in order to get past the screen, we have to have established your internal user ID and associated it with one or more links. So we use the brute force method for security. So we build one university-wide data set, and then we physically separate it by campus or within campus to these departmental folder structures. So it's another example of an old-fashioned way of doing something, but it works. Not an optimal way to do it, but a working way. Should I show the last suspense account thing? Okay. Thank you all if I didn't say it, thank you up front for coming in. Thank you for coming for the last session of the day and staying so long and listening to me talk. It's very much appreciated. Glad to have the chance to be at this conference and to learn from you too. So our suspense accounts. Oh, you got it. All right. Oh, it's almost there. But in order to get to that last slide, I got to show you this. PRC. So this is a quick overview of our suspense account. So it is a subset of web processes through our P-card system and is stored and captured in our general ledger. And It's a control issue. If in a call center the suspense account balance gets to be too high, that means that people aren't properly clearing their balances, and we want to know about that. It's a P-card program management risk, and it actually could cause misstatements on our financials. If we have activity that's just stuck in our suspense account, that means that it's not properly reassigned to supplies or services or travel or rentals or whatever it should be. So this lets us band the balances by center, from largest to smallest, or to cluster them. So we have a summary level look, and we have a detail level look. 14B. Oops, I ran this from the wrong place. Sorry, I ran that from the wrong place. One more chance. Like the animation. Yeah, one thing I've never been able to figure out how to do was to put the Jeopardy music, to have that playing in the background while this is rendering. Because you don't know what the answer is going to be until you see it, until it's done. So anyway, from the summary exhibit, these were the two cost centers that had suspense account code balances that were north of $25,000. And one of them was in the office of our president, and they're a little hard to chase after with a stick, but at least you can see those areas that are somewhat out of compliance. So that's all the templates and exhibits that I wanted to share. I hope you found them meaningful. I'm going to get back to PowerPoints and just page through this other stuff. This should all be available. We did our demo, and then we have Jack the Bulldog. So thank you again for